"I'm too big for you," he warned, but she straddled the cowboy and whispered, "Try me anyway." The sun had just begun to climb above the hills surrounding the small ranch town, casting golden light over the dusty roads and wooden fences. The air was warm, tinged with a faint smell of hay and fresh soil. In the quiet early morning, most of the townspeople were still inside their homes, sipping coffee and preparing for the day ahead. But not everyone was inside. Out in the open fields, a figure moved with a steady, confident rhythm. A cowboy, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing worn leather boots and a hat that shaded his sharp eyes. He was known in town as one of the strongest and most capable men around, a man who seemed to handle anything that came his way with ease. People often said he was as big as the challenges he faced, and even bigger in heart when it came to helping others. That morning he was tending to his horses, checking on the stables and making sure the fences were secure. Everything seemed ordinary, as if it were just another routine day. He worked methodically, but there was a faint sense of anticipation in the air, like something unexpected was about to happen. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to take a turn. Across town, a woman was preparing to arrive at the ranch. She wasn't from the area, but she had heard stories about the cowboy, about the challenges he handled and the way he seemed to command respect effortlessly. She wasn't intimidated. In fact, she was curious. Curious to see if the man everyone spoke of was as skilled, strong, and confident as the rumors suggested. She packed her bag carefully, making sure she had everything she needed for the day, and set out with determination in her step. There was a fire in her eyes, a sense of purpose that made her movements deliberate and strong. When she arrived at the ranch, the first thing she noticed was the size of the place. The stables were large, stretching along the fields, and the horses were healthy and energetic, their coats shining in the morning sun. But what drew her attention most was the cowboy himself, moving easily among the animals, speaking to them gently, yet with authority. He looked up briefly as she approached, his eyes narrowing slightly, curiosity and a hint of caution in his gaze. "You must be new around here," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Not many people come to this part of the ranch without knowing what they're doing." "I can handle myself," she replied, her tone confident, with a trace of a smile. She didn't want to seem arrogant, but she wanted him to understand that she wasn't someone to be underestimated. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "We'll see about that," he said, half as a challenge, half as a warning. Then, with a smirk, he added, "I'm too big for you." His words carried a playful weight, hinting at the fact that he was not just physically strong, but experienced in handling difficult tasks. Instead of retreating, she stepped closer, her eyes meeting his steadily. She didn't flinch, didn't step back. "Try me anyway," she whispered, a spark of defiance in her voice. There was something in the way she said it, soft yet unwavering, that made him pause for just a moment. The cowboy chuckled quietly, shaking his head. He wasn't used to anyone standing up to him like that, especially not with such calm confidence. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that neither of them could ignore. He felt a pull toward her. Something about her energy, her fearlessness, intrigued him more than he would admit. They spent the next few minutes circling each other, observing, speaking in small, playful remarks that carried unspoken challenges. She asked questions about the ranch, about the horses, and about his work, each one deliberate, as if testing his patience and skill. He answered, sometimes teasing, sometimes serious, but always with a subtle respect forming beneath the surface. After a while, he decided to show her something that not many outsiders had seen. "If you really want to see what I do here, follow me," he said, leading her toward the larger stables at the back of the ranch. The woman followed, her steps steady, her mind alert to everything around her. She noticed how he moved with ease, how the horses responded to his voice, and how he handled situations calmly, even when things became tricky. At the back of the stables, there was a horse that had a reputation for being difficult, skittish and unpredictable. The cowboy explained that this particular horse had challenged even the most experienced riders, and few had managed to tame it completely. He looked at her with a small grin. "Think you can handle that?" he asked. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "I'm not afraid of a challenge," she said firmly. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's see what you've got." She approached the horse slowly, showing patience and respect, just as he had taught her. Her hands moved confidently, her voice soft yet commanding. The horse shifted slightly but didn't shy away, sensing her steadiness. The cowboy watched closely, impressed by her focus and calm under pressure. As they worked together, the tension between them shifted from playful challenge to mutual respect. He saw that her strength wasn't just in her words or her boldness, it was in her actions, in the way she faced challenges without hesitation. She realized that he wasn't just big in size, but in skill and heart. Someone who had faced countless difficulties and handled them with patience and courage. Hours passed as they worked side by side, tending to the horses and completing tasks around the ranch. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the fields, and still, neither of them had grown tired of the challenge or each other's company. There was a sense of camaraderie forming, built on respect, skill, and the thrill of facing something difficult together. As the day drew to a close, the cowboy leaned against the fence, watching her as she adjusted a halter on one of the horses. He felt a mix of admiration and curiosity. He hadn't expected anyone to approach him with such fearlessness, and he certainly hadn't expected to enjoy the company so much. She caught his gaze and smiled slightly, a hint of playful defiance still in her eyes. "Not so big now, am I?" she teased gently. He laughed, shaking his head. "Maybe not," he admitted, his voice carrying a rare note of respect. He realized that this encounter was unlike any he had experienced before. She was strong, capable, and brave, and she wasn't afraid to challenge him in ways that few ever dared. That evening, as they walked back toward the ranch house, there was an unspoken understanding between them. The day had been full of challenges, learning, and moments of tension, but it had also been the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated. The cowboy, usually reserved and cautious with newcomers, felt a strange excitement about what lay ahead. And the woman, usually independent and self-reliant, sensed that she had found someone who could match her courage and determination. The sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, and the ranch was bathed in the warm glow of evening. It was the kind of moment that felt suspended in time, a pause before the next chapter of their story. Both knew that this was only the beginning, that more challenges, tests, and surprises were waiting. But for now, they could enjoy the quiet understanding that had formed between them, a mix of respect, curiosity, and the faint spark of something more. As night fell over the ranch, the cowboy stood near the stables watching the stars appear one by one. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she had met his challenge, the calm confidence in her voice, and the determination in her eyes. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that someone like her was rare, someone who dared to face him head-on without fear. Meanwhile, she sat quietly in the porch of the ranch house, reflecting on the day. She had come to see if she could match the cowboy, and in many ways, she had. But she also realized that there was more to him than just strength. There was a kindness, a sense of responsibility, and a quiet depth that drew her in, making her want to learn more about him. The night was calm, the wind soft through the fields, and a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Both of them knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and perhaps new revelations about each other. But for now, the first encounter had set the stage. A meeting of two strong, determined individuals who weren't afraid to face challenges and who had discovered an unexpected connection in the process. And so, the day ended with the promise of more challenges, more tension, more understanding, and the slow, steady beginning of a bond built on courage, respect, and the thrill of daring to face someone as strong as yourself. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the ranch, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The air was fresh, carrying the faint scent of earth and hay, and the quiet of the morning was broken only by the distant sound of horses stirring in the stables. The woman stepped outside, stretching her arms, feeling ready for the day. She had learned a lot yesterday, but she knew today would bring new challenges. Her curiosity about the cowboy had only grown, and she felt a thrill in knowing that she might face tasks many would find too difficult. The cowboy was already outside, moving between the horses with practiced ease. He noticed her approach, and for a moment he paused, studying her with a mix of amusement and respect. "You're early," he said, his voice calm but carrying a hint of challenge. "I don't like wasting time," she replied, her tone steady. "There's a lot to learn, and I want to see if I can keep up with you." He smiled slightly, shaking his head. "Keep up? You might surprise me," he said. There was a quiet spark of excitement in his eyes, the kind that appeared only when he faced something, or someone, worthy of his full attention. The first task of the day was simple in appearance but challenging in execution. The cowboy led her to a pen where a group of horses had gathered. One horse in particular had a reputation for being difficult to handle. It was strong, unpredictable, and often refused to follow commands. Many experienced riders avoided it, considering it too stubborn to train. "This horse has challenged almost everyone who's tried to work with it," he explained. "I want to see how you handle something that's bigger than you, that doesn't follow instructions easily." The woman studied the horse carefully, noticing its tense posture and quick darting movements. She stepped closer, speaking softly to it. Her voice was calm, reassuring, and filled with a quiet authority that made the horse pause and listen. The cowboy watched closely, impressed by her focus and confidence. At first the horse was wary, shifting its weight and flicking its ears. But she moved carefully, placing her hands in the right places, using her body to signal patience and control. Slowly the horse responded, its movements becoming less erratic. The cowboy nodded, recognizing her skill. "Not bad," he said quietly. "You have patience. That's what most people lack." Hours passed as she worked with the horse, gradually earning its trust. The cowboy guided her when necessary, offering tips and correcting minor mistakes, but mostly he let her take the lead. With every small success, the tension between them shifted slightly. It was no longer just playful challenge. It became respect, admiration, and a subtle, unspoken connection that neither of them had expected. After the horse was calm and responsive, the cowboy suggested another challenge, one that tested both strength and skill. "Let's try something a little harder," he said. "I want to see if you can handle a task that requires teamwork as well as courage." He led her to a section of the ranch where the fencing had been damaged. A storm had passed through recently, leaving broken boards and scattered tools across the field. The task was simple in concept: repair the fence so it could hold the horses safely. But the size of the task, combined with the uneven ground and heavy boards, made it a challenge for anyone working alone. "Think you can handle it?" he asked, giving her a small smirk. "I'm ready," she said confidently. Together they lifted boards, hammered nails, and cleared debris. It wasn't easy. The boards were heavy, the nails stubborn, and the ground uneven. There were moments when they struggled, when the board slipped or the hammer missed its mark. But they kept going, side by side, communicating with gestures, nods, and occasional short phrases. During the work, there were moments of playful teasing. She would joke about how strong he was, and he would challenge her to lift a board herself. Each time she rose to the occasion, showing determination and surprising him with her endurance. They laughed when mistakes happened, learning from each one, and gradually the fence began to take shape. By midday they paused to catch their breath, sitting on a fallen log and wiping sweat from their brows. The sun was high, warming their skin, and the ranch stretched out around them, quiet and peaceful. The cowboy looked at her with a rare softness. "You've got more strength than I thought," he said. "I learned from watching you," she replied, smiling. "You make it look easy." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Easy? Not even close. But you handle it well. You don't give up." His tone carried genuine admiration, the kind that wasn't easy to earn. After the break, they returned to the fence, working efficiently together. The woman began to notice something she hadn't before: the way he approached challenges calmly, without rushing, yet always with precision. It was a skill born of experience, but also of patience and care. She realized that courage wasn't just about facing fear. It was about understanding it, managing it, and acting despite it. As the day wore on, their teamwork grew smoother. They anticipated each other's movements, handing boards and tools without words, and supporting each other when the weight or difficulty increased. The cowboy started to notice the woman's unique approach, her ability to stay calm under pressure, her keen observation of details, and her refusal to be intimidated by difficult situations. By late afternoon, the fence was complete. It wasn't perfect, but it was strong, secure, and a testament to their teamwork. They stood back, looking at their work, breathing heavily and smiling with satisfaction. The cowboy turned to her, a look of genuine respect on his face. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "You've got more determination than most people I've met." She smiled, feeling proud but also grateful for his guidance. "I just didn't want to back down," she said simply.
"I wanted to see if I could match you." The cowboy nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "You did more than match me."
"You showed me something I didn't expect." There was a pause, a moment of silence filled with understanding, and the subtle tension that had been building since their first meeting began to shift into something deeper. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch, they walked back toward the main house. The air was cool now, and the fields were bathed in the warm, golden light of evening. There was a quiet sense of accomplishment between them, a recognition of what they had achieved together and the challenges they had faced. Later, as they sat on the porch watching the last light fade from the sky, the cowboy spoke again. "You've got courage," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't even try what you did today. They'd have given up long before." "I didn't want to give up," she replied. "I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, and maybe impress you a little too." She laughed lightly, and he couldn't help but smile at her confidence. There was a quiet moment after that, filled with unspoken words. Both of them had felt the day's challenges in a way that went beyond physical strength. They had tested each other, learned from each other, and formed a connection built on respect and shared effort. The cowboy realized that she wasn't just brave. She was thoughtful, persistent, and capable of handling challenges he had thought only he could face. As the evening deepened, the stars began to appear, twinkling above the ranch in the darkening sky. The woman leaned back, feeling a sense of satisfaction and anticipation for the days to come. She had proven herself today, and yet she knew there were more challenges ahead, more lessons to learn, and more moments that would test her courage. The cowboy stood nearby, watching the sky, reflecting on the day. He had faced many challenges in his life, but rarely had he encountered someone who pushed him to see things differently, someone whose determination and spirit could match his own. He felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity, a feeling he hadn't expected to experience so soon. The night was quiet, the only sounds coming from the distant horses and the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Both of them knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tasks, and perhaps new tests of skill, patience, and courage. But for now, they could enjoy the sense of achievement, the connection formed through shared effort, and the excitement of discovering someone who could match them in strength, determination, and spirit. As they finally parted ways for the night, there was an unspoken understanding between them. The woman knew she had earned a measure of respect, and the cowboy knew he had met someone remarkable, someone who could challenge him, inspire him, and perhaps even change the way he saw the world. The stars shone brightly over the ranch, casting silver light across the fields. It was a night of quiet reflection, of satisfaction after hard work, and of anticipation for what the next day might bring. The bond between the two, formed through challenge, respect, and shared effort, had only just begun. And so, the second day ended with the promise of more. More challenges, more lessons, and the slow but steady growth of trust, admiration, and connection between two people who refused to back down from anything, not even each other. The morning sun rose over the ranch once again, its golden light spilling across the fields, warming the earth and the dew-covered grass. The air carried a calm energy, the kind that comes before a day full of action and challenge. The woman stepped outside, her boots crunching softly on the gravel path. Yesterday had been exhausting but rewarding, and today promised to be even more demanding. She was ready, not just for physical tasks, but for the quiet tests of patience, observation, and understanding that often mattered as much as strength on the ranch. The cowboy was already out, walking along the fence line, inspecting it carefully for any weak spots or signs of wear. When he saw her approaching, he offered a small nod. "Morning," he said, his voice steady but carrying an unspoken challenge. "Morning," she replied, meeting his gaze. There was a subtle tension between them now, a mix of curiosity, respect, and anticipation. Neither of them needed to speak the unspoken thought. Today would be another test. The first task he set for her was simple in instruction but demanding in execution. "I want you to check the water troughs," he said. "Some of them are hard to reach and not easy to handle, especially if you're not used to the weight." She nodded, understanding that this was more than a chore. It was a chance to demonstrate focus, endurance, and problem-solving. She moved from trough to trough, lifting the heavy buckets of water, carefully pouring it into each trough, and ensuring that none of the horses went thirsty. The cowboy observed from a distance, noting her careful attention to detail, the way she adjusted her grip, and how she kept her balance while carrying the full buckets.
"You've got steady hands,"
he remarked as she returned the empty bucket to the well. "Not everyone can manage that without spilling. Practice helps," she replied lightly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "And I like to get things right." He nodded thoughtfully, impressed by both her skill and her attitude. There was something about her that stood out, something that made him take notice beyond her abilities. She had a quiet confidence that wasn't loud or boastful, but it was undeniable. After the troughs were taken care of, he led her to a small corral near the edge of the ranch. Inside were a few young horses that were still learning how to respond to humans and their environment. "These little ones need guidance," he explained. "Not force, not yelling, just patience and understanding. If you can handle them, you'll learn more than just control. You'll learn respect, and they'll respect you back."
She stepped into the corral, her movements careful and deliberate.
The young horses eyed her warily, sensing a new presence. She spoke softly to them, moving slowly, making sure they could see her hands and feet. Gradually they relaxed, inching closer with curiosity and cautious trust. The cowboy watched quietly, noticing how her gentle authority and patient demeanor brought results. He had handled many animals in his life, but there was a unique quality to the way she connected with these young horses, a combination of courage and empathy that made them respond positively. Hours passed as she worked with the horses, leading them around the corral, teaching them small commands and earning their trust. The cowboy offered guidance when needed, but mostly let her take the lead. He found himself impressed not only by her skill, but by her willingness to learn, adapt, and listen. There was a balance in her actions that made her capable yet humble, confident yet open to advice. During a brief break, they sat together under the shade of an old oak tree. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, breathing deeply, and looked at the cowboy. "I've never worked with horses this young before," she admitted. "It's harder than I expected, but I'm learning a lot." "Good," he said, his tone calm but carrying meaning. "It's not just about strength or speed. It's about paying attention, reading the situation, and reacting without panic. You've got that. Most people don't." There was a moment of quiet between them, filled with a sense of understanding. The cowboy, who usually kept his thoughts to himself, felt a rare connection forming. He appreciated her courage, her patience, and the way she approached challenges with a mix of determination and calm. She, in turn, began to notice the quiet depth beneath his confident exterior, the thoughtfulness, the careful observation, and the subtle respect he gave to those who earned it. After their break, he suggested a new task, one that combined physical challenge with teamwork. "There's a barn at the far end of the ranch," he said. "It needs some repairs, and I want you to help. Some of the boards are heavy, and it will take coordination to get it done efficiently." They walked together to the barn, the sun climbing higher and warming their backs. Once inside, they examined the structure, noting the weak beams and loose boards. The work required lifting, hammering, and careful alignment. At first, it was awkward, their movements not fully synchronized. But as they worked side by side, something shifted. They began to anticipate each other's actions, handing tools before they were asked, adjusting the boards in sync, and communicating with subtle gestures. The barn slowly began to take shape under their combined effort. With every board they secured, every nail hammered into place, the cowboy noticed her resilience. She didn't complain, she didn't hesitate, and she didn't give up. Even when a particularly stubborn board refused to fit properly, she adjusted, found a new approach, and made it work. Her persistence impressed him, and he couldn't help but acknowledge it silently to himself. By late afternoon, the barn was strong and stable, the repairs complete. They stood back, breathing heavily, surveying the results of their efforts. "You're stronger than I expected," he said, a small smile on his face. "And you're not as intimidating as I thought," she replied, returning the smile with a playful glint in her eyes. They laughed lightly, the tension of the day easing into something more relaxed and natural. The shared effort had created a bond, one built on mutual respect, understanding, and the realization that they could rely on each other. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the cowboy suggested they take a walk to the pasture. "The day's not over yet," he said, a hint of challenge in his voice. "There's one more thing I want you to try, something that will test not just strength or skill, but courage." She followed him willingly, curious about what he had in mind. They arrived at a small hill overlooking the ranch, where a rope swing had been tied to a strong tree branch. "I want you to swing across the creek," he explained. "It's not easy, and it requires balance, timing, and trust in yourself. Most people hesitate, but I think you can do it." She looked at the creek below, then back at him, a flicker of determination in her eyes.
"I can do it," she said simply.
The cowboy helped her with the rope, explaining the technique, giving her advice, and offering encouragement. She climbed onto the swing, gripping it tightly, and took a deep breath. With a running start, she let herself swing out over the creek. The wind rushed past her face, and for a brief moment, there was nothing but the thrill of the challenge. She landed safely on the other side, her heart racing and a triumphant smile spreading across her face. The cowboy clapped, genuinely impressed. "You did it," he said. "I didn't think anyone could handle that on their first try." "I trusted myself," she replied, her voice calm despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. The day ended with them sitting quietly near the creek, watching the sun set and the sky darken. There was a sense of accomplishment, not just in the tasks they had completed, but in the connection they had formed. They had faced challenges together, learned from each other, and discovered qualities in one another that went beyond physical strength or skill. The cowboy realized that he respected her deeply, not just for her courage, but for her heart, her persistence, and her willingness to face challenges head-on. The woman recognized in him a rare combination of strength, patience, and understanding, qualities that made him someone she could learn from and rely upon. As night fell, the ranch grew quiet. The stars appeared in the sky, casting a gentle glow over the fields. They parted ways for the evening, each reflecting on the day's events. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that something meaningful had begun, something built on trust, respect, and the thrill of shared challenges. And so, Part 3 closed with the promise of a turning point, a moment where their bond, tested through courage, skill, and teamwork, would grow deeper, leading to emotional discovery and personal growth. The anticipation hung in the air, ready to carry them into the next chapter of their story. The morning sun spilled over the ranch in soft golden light, painting the fields and stables with warmth. The air was calm and fresh, carrying the faint smell of earth and hay, and the quiet promise of a day full of challenges and revelations. The woman stepped outside, her boots pressing into the soft ground, and breathed in deeply. She had learned so much over the past few days, about the ranch, the animals, and herself. But today felt different. Today was more than work. It was a test of trust, teamwork, and courage in a way that neither she nor the cowboy had fully realized yet. The cowboy was already waiting near the stables, his tall figure silhouetted against the morning light. When he saw her, he offered a small nod. "Morning," he said, his voice calm but carrying a tone of anticipation. "Morning," she replied, meeting his gaze. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, one built on the challenges they had faced together. Yesterday and the day before had tested their patience, strength, and skill. And today would test the depth of their connection, the trust they had built, and the courage to rely on one another. He gestured toward the far end of the ranch. "There's a task today that will require both of us," he explained. "It's not just about strength or skill. It's about communication, timing, and trust." The storm from last week left a fallen tree blocking the main path. "We need to clear it safely, and it's big enough that we can't do it alone." She nodded, excitement and determination lighting her eyes. "Then let's get started," she said. As they approached the fallen tree, its size became clear. It was massive, with thick branches that reached far across the path. The task was daunting, and they both understood that it would require careful planning. They discussed a strategy, examining the tree, the surrounding area, and how best to move the branches without risking injury. The cowboy handed her a sturdy rope. "We'll pull from different angles," he explained. "I'll guide you. You follow my lead and I'll follow yours when needed. Trust is key." She nodded, gripping the rope tightly. "I trust you," she said simply, her voice steady. The first pull required coordination. They counted together, heaving in unison. The rope strained, their muscles tensed, and the ground beneath them shifted slightly as the branches resisted their efforts. After several attempts, a large limb began to move. They adjusted their stance, shifted the rope, and tried again. Slowly but surely, the tree began to give way, and they moved each section piece by piece. Throughout the task, they communicated constantly, offering instructions, encouragement, and reassurance. At one point, a branch slipped unexpectedly, and she reacted instinctively, stabilizing the rope and preventing an accident. The cowboy's eyes widened slightly, impressed by her quick thinking and calm reaction under pressure. "You handled that well," he said, his voice carrying genuine respect. "Most people would have panicked." "I kept my focus," she replied, her eyes bright, "and I knew you were there to guide me." Hours passed as they worked tirelessly. Sweat dripped from their brows, muscles ached, and the sun climbed high in the sky. Yet there was a rhythm to their efforts, a harmony that developed as they moved together. Each branch they cleared was a small victory, a testament to their teamwork and the trust that had grown between them over the past few days. Finally, after hours of effort, the path was clear. They stepped back, breathing heavily but smiling with satisfaction. The obstacle that had seemed insurmountable at first was now gone, thanks to their combined determination, communication, and courage. The cowboy looked at her with a rare softness in his eyes. "I've never worked with anyone like you," he said quietly. "You've got strength, skill, and courage. But more than that, you've got heart. You trust, you learn, and you face challenges without hesitation." She smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. "And you've taught me a lot," she replied. "Not just about the ranch, but about courage, patience, and trusting someone else to have your back." There was a quiet moment, filled with understanding and admiration. Neither of them needed to speak further. Their shared experiences, challenges, and victories had spoken louder than words ever could. Later, they decided to check on the horses, ensuring that everything was in order after the morning's work. The animals had sensed the energy between the two humans, and even the young horses responded to their calm authority and coordinated effort. The woman noticed how naturally the cowboy moved around the horses, his confidence balanced with patience and care. She realized that courage wasn't just about facing danger, it was about handling responsibility and guiding those who depended on you. As they finished tending to the animals, the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ranch. The warm glow of evening bathed the fields and stables in soft light, and a quiet calm settled over the property. The cowboy turned to her. "There's one last thing I want to show you," he said. "It's something that's not about skill or strength, but about trust, something I think you're ready for." Curious, she followed him to a small hill near the edge of the ranch. At the top, there was a sturdy rope swing tied to a strong branch of an old oak tree, the same swing she had used on the third day. But this time, it wasn't just about swinging across a creek. The cowboy had set up a more challenging course, one that required balance, coordination, and absolute trust between the two of them. "You'll need to step onto this platform," he explained, pointing to a wooden plank suspended between two trees.
"I'll support you, but you need to trust me completely. One wrong move, and you could slip."
"Ready?" She looked at the platform, then back at him. A flicker of determination in her eyes. "I trust you," she said calmly. Carefully, she stepped onto the plank, feeling it shift slightly beneath her feet. The cowboy held her hand, steadying her as she moved forward. The wind rustled through the leaves, the plank creaked, and for a moment the world seemed suspended in time. But she moved with confidence, trusting his guidance and her own balance. They navigated the course together, communicating with gestures, nods, and quiet words. Each step brought a sense of accomplishment, a confirmation that trust wasn't just about relying on someone else. It was about believing in yourself and your abilities as well. When they reached the end, they stepped onto solid ground together, laughing with relief and triumph. The shared experience was exhilarating, a final challenge that solidified everything they had learned about trust, courage, and working as a team. As the stars began to appear in the evening sky, they walked back toward the main ranch house. The air was cool now, and the fields shimmered softly in the moonlight. There was a quiet satisfaction between them, a recognition of the journey they had taken together. They had faced challenges, tested each other, learned from one another, and grown, not just as individuals, but as a pair who understood the value of trust, respect, and shared effort. The cowboy turned to her once more, his voice soft but sincere. "I respect you," he said. "You've proven yourself in every way. You're brave, capable, and you face challenges head on. I didn't expect to meet someone like you so quickly, but I'm grateful I did." She smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond pride in her accomplishments. "And I respect you," she replied. "You've shown me what it means to be patient, strong, and confident, not just in yourself, but in how you work with others. You've taught me more than I could have imagined." There was a quiet moment, the kind that needed no words. Both of them had realized something important, that strength and courage were not just about size, skill, or power. They were about trust, patience, understanding, and the willingness to face challenges together. As the night settled over the ranch, the air filled with the quiet sounds of nature, they stood side by side, looking out over the fields. The journey had been long, challenging, and rewarding, but it had also brought them closer in ways neither had expected. They had discovered respect, admiration, and the beginnings of a connection built on shared experience, courage, and mutual trust. And so, their story reached its resolution, not with a grand declaration or dramatic event, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had faced challenges, grown stronger, and formed a bond that would last. The ranch, the horses, the tasks, and the trials had taught them lessons about life, courage, and the power of trusting and respecting one another. The night was calm, the stars bright overhead, and the gentle breeze carried a sense of promise for the days ahead. Both the cowboy and the woman knew that challenges would continue, but they also knew they had the strength, courage, and trust to face whatever came their way, together. The final moments were peaceful, reflective, and filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had started as strangers, tested each other through challenges, and ended as equals, united by experience, respect, and the thrill of daring to face life boldly. And as the moon rose high, casting silver light over the ranch, it was clear that this was more than just a story of strength or courage. It was a story of growth, trust, and the extraordinary connections that can form when two determined, brave, and capable people meet, challenge each other, and discover the power of believing in themselves and one another.